My husband told me he accidentally cheated at his company retreat because he tripped and fell on top of his coworker and somehow his clothes came off during the fall and they accidentally had intimate relations for 30 minutes while he was unconscious from the impact and now he's claiming brain injury. I'm writing this because I genuinely cannot believe the words that came out of my husband's mouth yesterday, and I need to know if I'm losing my mind or if this is actually as insane as it sounds. I've been married to Kevin for 8 years, and I thought I knew him pretty well, but apparently I was completely wrong about his capacity for creative storytelling. Some background: Kevin works in marketing for a mid-sized tech company, and last week he went on a company retreat to a resort about 2 hours from our city. It was a 3-day team-building event with outdoor activities, workshops, and evening social events. Kevin has been to these retreats before, and they're usually pretty tame affairs with trust falls, presentation workshops, and maybe some light drinking at dinner. Kevin came home on Sunday evening in a weird mood. He was quiet, kept checking his phone, and seemed jumpy every time I tried to start a conversation. When I asked how the retreat went, he gave me vague answers about it being fine and productive but didn't share any of the usual funny stories or complaints about his coworkers that he normally comes home with. Monday morning, Kevin left for work earlier than usual and came home late, claiming he had extra projects to catch up on from being away. Tuesday was the same thing. By Wednesday, I was starting to wonder if something was wrong at his job or if he was dealing with some kind of work stress he didn't want to talk about. Wednesday evening, Kevin was in the shower when his phone started buzzing with text messages on the nightstand. Normally I wouldn't look, but the frequency of the messages was unusual, and I was worried it might be some kind of work emergency. When I glanced at the screen, I saw several messages from someone named Miranda K with heart emojis. The preview text I could see said things like "miss you already" and "can't stop thinking about this weekend." My stomach dropped immediately. Miranda K. I knew that name. Miranda King works in Kevin's department as a graphic designer. She's about 25, single, and Kevin has mentioned her occasionally in work conversations. She's the one who always volunteers for extra projects and stays late to help with deadlines. I'd met her briefly at a company Christmas party last year, and she seemed nice enough, though a bit overly enthusiastic about everything. When Kevin got out of the shower, I was sitting on our bed with his phone in my hands. I asked him who Miranda K was and why she was sending him messages with heart emojis. Kevin's face went completely white, and he started stammering about how it wasn't what it looked like. I opened his phone and started reading the message thread. What I found were dozens of messages between Kevin and Miranda from the past few days, talking about how amazing their time together at the retreat had been and how they couldn't wait to see each other again. There were references to their room and staying up all night and things that were clearly intimate in nature. Kevin was standing there dripping wet in a towel, and I demanded an explanation. That's when he told me the most ridiculous story I've ever heard in my life. According to Kevin, what happened at the retreat was a complete accident. He said that on Saturday night, after the group dinner, he was walking back to his room when he saw Miranda struggling with her key card at her door. Being a helpful colleague, he went over to assist her with the electronic lock. While he was helping her with the door, Kevin claims he accidentally tripped over her suitcase, which was apparently sitting in the hallway for some reason. When he tripped, he says he fell forward and somehow landed on top of Miranda, who had also fallen backward into her room. But here's where the story gets completely insane. Kevin told me that the impact of the fall somehow caused both of their clothes to come off. He couldn't explain exactly how this happened, but he insisted that the fall was so violent that it resulted in both of them being naked. He then claimed that the fall knocked him unconscious, and when he woke up 30 minutes later, he and Miranda were in a compromising position on her bed. He said he had no memory of what happened during those 30 minutes, but Miranda later told him that they had accidentally been intimate while he was unconscious. I stared at Kevin in complete disbelief. I asked him if he seriously expected me to believe that he had accidentally tripped, accidentally fallen on a coworker, accidentally lost all his clothes, accidentally became unconscious, and then accidentally had an intimate encounter for 30 minutes while unconscious. Kevin got defensive and said that I was being unreasonable and that accidents happen. He insisted that he would never intentionally cheat on me and that the whole thing was just a very unfortunate series of coincidences. He said Miranda felt terrible about what had happened and that they both agreed it was just a freak accident that would never happen again. I asked Kevin to explain the text messages, since if this was really an unconscious accident, why were he and Miranda texting about missing each other and wanting to see each other again? Kevin said that Miranda was just being friendly and that I was reading too much into the heart emojis. He claimed the messages about missing each other were about missing their friendship and work collaboration. When I pointed out that one of Miranda's messages said I can't stop thinking about how good it felt, Kevin said she was probably referring to how good it felt to finally finish a big project they'd been working on together. He said I was deliberately misinterpreting innocent work-related messages because I was jealous and suspicious. I asked Kevin why he hadn't told me about this accident when he came home from the retreat, since surely falling unconscious and waking up naked with a coworker would be something worth mentioning to his wife. Kevin said he didn't want to worry me with something that wasn't his fault and that he was still processing the trauma of the experience. At this point, I was so incredulous that I started asking more detailed questions about his story. I asked him to explain exactly how falling down could result in both people losing all their clothes. Kevin said that Miranda was wearing a dress that must have gotten caught on something when she fell, and his shirt must have torn when he landed on top of her. When I asked about their underwear and his pants, he said the impact was so severe that it somehow caused everything to come off. I asked Kevin if he had any injuries from this violent fall that supposedly knocked him unconscious. He said he might have had a small bump on his head, but it had healed by now. I asked if Miranda had any injuries from having a full-grown man fall on top of her hard enough to cause unconsciousness. Kevin said she might have had some bruises, but he didn't want to ask her about it because that would be inappropriate. I then asked Kevin if anyone else at the retreat witnessed this accident, since it apparently happened in a hallway where other people might have seen a man falling on top of a woman and both of them losing their clothes. Kevin said it happened late at night when everyone else was asleep, and the hallway was empty. I asked if hotel security cameras might have captured this incident, since most hotels have surveillance in their hallways. Kevin said he didn't know about cameras and that he wasn't going to investigate because it would just embarrass Miranda and bring more attention to an already traumatic accident. Every answer Kevin gave me raised more questions and made his story sound more ridiculous. I finally asked him point blank if he really expected me to believe that he had unconsciously had an intimate encounter with a coworker, and that this was completely accidental and not cheating. Kevin got angry and said that I was being unfair and that he couldn't control what happened while he was unconscious. He said that if I really loved him, I would support him through this difficult time instead of interrogating him like he was a criminal. He accused me of not trusting him and said that my jealousy was destroying our marriage. I told Kevin that his story was completely unbelievable and that I wasn't stupid enough to fall for such an obviously made-up explanation. I said that even if I believed that he had somehow accidentally fallen on Miranda and lost his clothes, I couldn't believe that he had no memory or control over what happened next. Kevin then changed his story slightly. He said that maybe he hadn't been completely unconscious, but that he was very disoriented from the fall and wasn't thinking clearly. He said that Miranda was also confused and hurt from the fall, and that in their disoriented state, they had made a mistake that they both immediately regretted. I asked Kevin why, if they both immediately regretted this mistake, they were sending each other romantic text messages for days afterward. Kevin said that Miranda was probably just trying to process her feelings about the traumatic experience, and that he was trying to be supportive as a friend and colleague. I told Kevin that I needed time to think about everything he'd told me, and that I was going to stay at my sister's house for a few days. Kevin panicked and begged me not to leave, saying that we could work through this together. He promised that he would never see Miranda outside of work again and that he would request a transfer to a different department if necessary. But I couldn't get past the ridiculousness of his explanation. Even if I wanted to forgive him for cheating, the fact that he thought I was stupid enough to believe his accidental falling story was almost more insulting than the infidelity itself. I packed a bag and went to my sister Lisa's house, where I've been for the past 2 days trying to process everything. Lisa listened to Kevin's story and said it was the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard. She said that even if someone could accidentally fall on another person and lose their clothes, the idea that they would then accidentally have intimate relations while unconscious was completely absurd. Kevin has been calling and texting me constantly, alternating between apologies and angry messages about how I'm overreacting. He's also started adding new details to his story, saying that Miranda might have taken advantage of him while he was unconscious, which would make him the victim in this situation. I'm at a complete loss. Part of me wonders if Kevin actually believes his own story or if he knows how ridiculous it sounds but is hoping I'm naive enough to accept it. Either way, I don't know how to move forward with someone who thinks I'm stupid enough to believe that adultery can happen accidentally through a series of unfortunate coincidences. Update 2 days later. I wanted to update everyone because Kevin's story has somehow gotten even more ridiculous, and I'm starting to think he might actually have convinced himself that his version of events is true. Yesterday, Kevin showed up at Lisa's house unannounced, asking to talk to me privately. Lisa wasn't happy about it, but I agreed to hear him out because I was curious to see if he was going to stick to his original story or come up with something new. Kevin had clearly spent the past 2 days thinking about the holes in his explanation, because he came armed with additional details that supposedly supported his accidental cheating theory. First, Kevin told me that he had done some research on head injuries and discovered that it's possible to have automatism after a concussion, where your body performs actions without conscious awareness. He said this explained how he could have been intimate with Miranda without really being responsible for his actions. He also said that he had talked to Miranda about what happened, and she confirmed that he seemed out of it during their encounter and that she had been worried about his head injury. According to Kevin, Miranda said she should have stopped what was happening, but she was